Welcome to the Legal Innovation Forum podcast series, leading at the intersection of business and law. In today's episode, we are interviewing Lora Cheadle, an attorney and life and leadership coach. Lora explores the idea that lawyers are particularly susceptible to feeling betrayed at work, and she explains how they can tell when they're feeling betrayal as opposed to experiencing burnout. She offers advice for legal professionals to reclaim vitality and joy in the workplace, and she suggests strategies for leaders to create an environment where team members feel truly valued rather than betrayed. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe and stay tuned for more episodes.
A quick note from our podcast sponsor. Tired of dealing with document chaos in your corporate legal department? Let iManage simplify your life. With iManage's powerful document and email management system, you'll have everything you need in one place. Secured, organized, and easy to access. iManage is trusted by 40% of the Fortune 100 and by legal teams worldwide. Learn more about iManage on www.imanage.com. Welcome to the Legal Innovation Forum podcast. I'm Andrew Bowyer, the founder of the Legal Innovation Forum. Today, we're pleased to welcome Lora Cheadle, a former lawyer who left behind a high-stress legal career to become a life, wellness, and leadership coach, TEDx speaker, and burnout and betrayal recovery expert. Lora is also the author of self-help books, including the recently published It's Not Burnout, It's Betrayal, 5 Tools to Fuel Up and Thrive. Thanks for joining us today, Lora.
Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a very interesting topic. One of our key themes at the forum is what we kind of, in broad terms, call the people puzzle. And I think coming out of the pandemic, we are in a new era now when it comes to our connection between life and work. And that is producing all kinds of interesting outcomes of how people are working within companies, setting off on their own careers. And really that sort of concept of work-life balance is really front and center for people now. I also think that, in the legal sector, this is particularly of interest, high levels of burnout and other ancillary effects of that we see in the statistics, and it's something that's very very critical for the sector to be both aware of and to address in unique, impactful, and novel ways. So, Lora, delighted to have you. Tell us a little bit about how you went from being a lawyer to being an author, which I think probably quite a few of the audience would hope they'd be on the same kind of career path themselves.
Exactly. I was in-house counsel for an insurance company for 10 years. And although I loved practicing law, it's a very high-stress profession. And after having 2 kids in 22 months, having a husband he's a lawyer as well, a career where he had to travel out of state 2 weeks out of every month, and then going through a variety of personal issues. 3 out of 4 of my grandparents had cancer, emphysema, and then old age. I was just so compressed. I could not manage both life and my career at all to the level that I wanted to manage them. And I bowed out for a while. I thought I was going to be stepping back just for a little bit. And then when I started really having that time away and having the opportunity to self-reflect, it was really obvious to me that there was a lot more going on inside of me in terms of stress, in terms of I'm not managing this kind of a career well, and that long-term this is not going to be healthy for me. So that's when I started stepping away. I started moving into the wellness space. I started, learning about stress, well-being, both burnout and betrayal, and things just started clicking for me. I was fortunate enough to not need to be making money in the short run. So I started experimenting with other of my friends, other co-counsel, other attorneys, Hey, does this work? What's going on with you? And over a period of about 15 years, I slowly started developing this process, coaching, training. You know what's really interesting? Lawyers advocate on behalf of others, but they are terrible at advocating on behalf of themselves and their own well-being.
Yeah, that's interesting and absolutely true. So in terms of becoming an author and, 15 years of, I love how you referred to sort of the interviewing process and collaboration process with colleagues and other folks in the field. But I think what we could define it as in a sort of design term would be you were looking at the user experience of being a lawyer.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely, because it's unlike other professions.
yeah, so what do you think makes the legal profession different than other professions in the context of your process?
There's a couple of different things. First of all, a lot of lawyers are high achievers. They value achievement. They look for that external type of validation. They went to law school because they were good at school. You get to law school, you're competitive, you want to win. You're in a profession where we literally win cases or we lose cases, even if we're negotiating. It's did we have a successful negotiation? So a lot of being a lawyer is about winning. A lot of lawyers like to win, and we're always measuring ourselves externally instead of building ourselves up from the inside, having an internal sense of validation that even though I lost this case, perhaps I negotiated better than I have ever negotiated in my entire career. And I think that's a big part of it is all that external focus.
Right, right. So that's really interesting. And then in terms of the sort of philosophy behind your process now that you're applying that you've sort of created over a 15-year stretch. Tell me about that process, how you came to that conclusion. Um,
Yeah, it's so interesting. We hear about burnout. We hear about burnout everywhere. Oh, are you burned out? Burnout, it's such a problem. It's a $500 billion problem. It's this problem. It's creating that. I'm a lawyer. Let's look at the definitions. The definition of burnout is workplace stress that has been unsuccessfully managed. Now, that is a thing. Workplace stress is a thing. We can not successfully manage it, and that leads to burnout. So, what I was doing originally was I was applying all of these burnout remedies to myself, to my clients, and it would help, but it was constantly managing it. It was pushing down that stress. It was just managing it, and sometimes it wouldn't work. So, I started getting curious. If it's not burnout, if the traditional remedies for burnout aren't working, what else could it be? Along about that same time, I went through a significant personal betrayal in my life. I went through a horrific infidelity. I started learning a lot about betrayal and betrayal trauma. And I thought, this is really interesting because a lot of the symptoms of betrayal trauma are similar to those of burnout, yet it's a very, very different root cause. So, again, being the lawyer, I went to the definition. The definition of betrayal is the breaking of an expectation that you have relied on that ruptures your view of yourself, your world, or your career. And that's where it clicked. I thought, it is a ruptured expectation. As a lawyer, I had certain expectations. I expected to rise, to maybe make partner in a certain number of years. I expected to have winning numbers. I expected to be revered. I expected all of these things. And when those expectations didn't come to pass, instead of questioning myself and saying, you know what, Laura, is that a realistic expectation or not? I just got disgruntled. I thought life is treating me horrible. My career is awful. The profession stinks. The company stinks. The people around me stink. And then once again, I started testing that theory with the people that I worked with. And you know what the number one thing I heard was, oh my gosh, it feels like betrayal. I don't even know anything else. It just feels like betrayal. You're right on. And sure enough, as I started applying betrayal recovery principles to what we were calling burnout, the success rate was enormous.
So that's a really interesting comparison between the two.
Hmm.
And I would say, when we had a conversation before this podcast, it is a really interesting juxtaposition of the two things, because when you think betrayal, you kind of jump to what you said happened in your personal life before. That's where our mind jumps to. But
Exactly.
betrayal of the self, on the career path, and not meeting those expectations you set for yourself, particularly in the legal profession, because you can understand the path.
Hmm.
And when does that sort of run up against that betrayal burnout matrix is interesting. The other thing that stood out too is the concept of root causes versus proximate causes. This is
Exactly.
something that we look at in one of our approaches in our workshops that we put on, which are more about identifying challenges and diagnoses of them and prototyping new ways of doing things. But that concept of root and proximate causes formulates a big key part of that process. Maybe you can distinguish, because you touched on it a bit, is this sort of root versus proximate cause concept, and perhaps how people can get to that conclusion of what the root cause of this feeling of burnout, which is in fact
Mhm.
betrayal, actually, how do you get to the bottom of it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the first and foremost, it can be very simple. Does it feel more like burnout? Does it feel more like I can't manage this stress? I have no stress management skills or techniques? Or does it feel more like burnout? So I think that's the first thing is to just ask yourself, what does it feel more like? I would love to just take a moment and go through my fuel up process because that really illuminates kind of the difference between those. Fuel Up is an acronym. It stands for Find Your Why, Uncover the Root, which is what we're going to be talking about. E, Expectation Management. L is laughter, which actually is the number one way to calm and re regulate the nervous system. And then the up stands for unbroken promises. And that's keeping unbroken promises to yourself. The F and the U is what I want to use to answer your question. F stands for Find Your Why. Why are you doing what you do? Are you doing what you do because of this broad, I want to create justice in the world? Are you doing what you do because you want to have personal success, because you want to be number one in your field? Are you doing it because you just want to make money, because you want to have the house, the car, the lifestyle, and really it doesn't matter what you do, you just want to make the money? Getting in touch with why you do what you do and being honest about it is really where to start in this breakdown. Because so often in our culture that really leans into kind of woo woo metaphysical self helpy stuff, it's all about find your purpose, find your calling. That can be great if you've got that. That's fine. But let's be honest, most of us are working to pay the bills, we're working for status, we're working for some other reason. Call it for what it is. Call it for what it is and be okay with that. Because there is no faster route to burnout than lying to yourself, than saying, I'm doing this for altruistic reasons, when really in your heart and soul, you're like, no, I just want the lifestyle. Call it for what it is, find your why, break it down. And it can be a combination of reasons, absolutely. But when you call it for what it is, you are less likely to burn out because you know what you're working towards and you're knowing what the reward is. And you're less likely to feel betrayed because you're not lying to yourself and you're not lying to other people.
Excellent answer. And my question to you would be on the finding your why part. I would imagine people come across competing whys, right? It's not just one why. Like,
Yes.
hey, I would like to have a Porsche convertible, but I also
Hmm.
find a lot of purpose in what I do.
Yes.
And I don't have a Porsche convertible, but maybe one day I will. But how do people kind of measure that why. And it's okay to say, I do want a Porsche convertible, just as an example,
Absolutely.
but also I want to find purpose in my work. And guess what? I don't have either. What do I do then?
The 4 ways: personal, professional, altruistic, and practical. Break that down. What are your personal reasons for doing this? What are your professional reasons? What are the big altruistic, idealistic expectations? And then just practical. Use those 4 as a guide and start there. I have never met anybody who doesn't at least have one of those reasons. And
Right.
if you don't, that's really a clue to maybe step back a little bit. Think about career fair in 7th grade. Think about going to college and flipping through. Do you remember those big college catalogs? Flipping through and deciding on your major. What were the things that got you excited about career day, about picking a major? Think about those types of things. My first career day, I wanted to be a vet because I wanted to help animals. When I went to law school, it was about helping create justice. When I pivoted and started doing the wellness, it is helping people feel better. That root runs through. I'm always striving to help other people, other animals, other situations. That's that common root for me. And when
Mhm.
you self reflect and go back through your whole life, you will probably find a common root for you as well.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And would it be just in terms of how you actually can do that? Because maybe I'll do this tonight after the work day. Are you saying you should whiteboard this? You should just make a list and say, in these 4 categories, and let me think back to those fulcrum moments, those catalyst moments when I was really inspired by, again, I'm reflecting now in this conversation on, university professors or highlights in my personal life or whatever. How do you kind of like formulate that first step?
Mhm. First thing I recommend is literally taking a piece of paper, drawing the big X on it. You've got your 4 quadrants, and just start taking some notes. This is not an academic exercise. Don't think too hard about it. Just write some things down. Keep that piece of paper on your desk, tacked on your wall, whatever it is. Write some things on it when they come to mind and just see what happens. The second way that I really recommend getting to the bottom of this is write down. Again, I'm a pen and paper person because it goes to the subconscious portion of your mind. You will pull out more information when you're writing tactile pen on paper than you will typing or than you will just simply thinking about it. Finish this sentence. My problem is fill in the blank. My problem is I'm burned out. My problem is I'm disappointed. My problem is I'm feeling really resentful and bitter over my career. Write it down. And if you're listening and you have a moment, write that down right now too. Step 2, without thinking too hard, look at your problem word and write down 1 or 2 words that you associate with that word. The words don't have to make sense. If your problem is burnout, some of the words that I might associate are tired, worn out, not empowered. Then, step 3, go back to your original sentence. Cross out your original problem word and reread it, substituting those words that you associated with your problem word. Notice how that's a different solution. The solution to the problem, I'm burned out, which is what your original problem statement is a different solution to the problem statement, I'm tired. My problem is I'm tired.
Yeah.
And that's a really good way to start exploring what is going on with you because we get locked into spitting out the same sound bites. I'm tired. I'm angry. The company doesn't have my back. Blah, 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 blah. When you use that word association tool, you get to what's going on in your subconscious, in your body, and then you can better solve the correct problem.
Right. So that's the root cause, right?
Correct.
You're trying to get the proximate causes. I'm burnt out. the root causes are this.
Yes.
I miss the train every morning. That's a proximate cause because I go to bed too late.
Yes.
I watch Netflix too late.
Exactly.
Let's talk about the other 3 points, because I think this is quite interesting. So that obviously feeds into the uncovering your truth part.
Yes.
Anything more to say on that part of the process?
No, I think we wrapped that up very nicely.
Okay. Now we're talking about expectation management. So
Correct.
tell us a little bit about expectation management, what it means, perhaps in the legal profession, in your experience, and from your surveys of user experiences of lawyers, and how you can approach that and think about that differently.
Absolutely. Three-prong test here, three-step process. Can you identify your expectation? Can you communicate it to the proper person? And if you can you advocate on behalf of yourself and that expectation? If you can do all three of those things, then you know it's a realistic expectation. If you cannot identify, communicate, or advocate, then it is not a realistic expectation. So that's where to start. Are my expectations realistic or not?
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Now, an example of that, you expect a paycheck. If you don't get a paycheck, you can identify it. The problem is I didn't get a paycheck. You know who to communicate. I'm going to go to HR. I'm going to go to, whoever is in payroll. You know how to do that. Do you know how to advocate for yourself? Absolutely. It's pretty clear. I worked these hours. I billed these hours. This is my rate. This is what I get. And I didn't get it. Easy peasy. Where it starts getting complicated on those expectations that are not realistic. Okay. When I go back to when I was burning out, I had too much going on personally, professionally. Oh, I forgot to mention at the same time, all of my personal life was falling apart. The insurance company that I worked for was a Canadian-based insurance company, and it was in the process of merging with a US-based insurance company. So everything was changing at work too. I couldn't seem to get a handle on it. Could I identify what was going on? No, it was elusive. I felt disgruntled. I felt disappointed. People were dying that I didn't think were supposed to die. I couldn't really identify what was going on. I'm just in a bad place. I'm just really, really stressed. Who could I communicate that to get help? Uh, I don't know, the universe? You know what I mean? There really wasn't somebody I could go to and say, do you know my grandparents are dying? And even though rationally I get that, it's really hard on me emotionally. No, I couldn't have communicated that to somebody. And then how could I have advocated on behalf of myself? I don't really know. I don't really know. At one point, I went part-time. That was helpful, but it still didn't address all of those internal conflicts and stressors that I was feeling. So what I had was this unrealistic expectation that I could manage it all because I grew up in the era of women can do it all. You can have the family, you can have the career, you can do it all. So I had this unrealistic expectation that, well, I'm smart, I'm capable, of course I can do it all.
Mhm.
And that was the expectation that was ruptured for me that started causing me to burn out, to feel bitter, to feel disgruntled, to feel disappointed because that expectation, which was not realistic, was ruptured.
Right. And so how did you come to terms with that?
Couple of different things. When you first start identifying it, at first it's so elusive that you'll say, I don't really know what's going on. Keep asking yourself smaller and smaller questions. What did I expect in this situation? What did I expect from this meeting at work? What did I expect from this client interaction? What am I expecting from my career, both short-term and long-term? Are you expecting to bill a certain number of hours? Are you expecting to make partner in a certain number of years? Are you expecting a winning record? What are you expecting? Because when you can start identifying it, then you become a little bit more clear and a little bit more focused on that. And I encourage people when they ask themselves at self-reflection, how do I expect to feel? Do I expect to feel exhausted and run down by the end of every day? Do I expect to have some energy when I get home to maybe make a healthy dinner? Do I expect to be able to work out and maintain some physical fitness while working this career? Ask yourself those expectations, because then once you get clear, it's easier to communicate. I'm going to communicate that I'm taking an hour for lunch every day because in that hour, I can get in a fast walk. I'm communicating maybe with my partner at home, this is happening around dinner, or that is happening around childcare. It's not a career limiting thing. I'm not talking about going into work and saying, I need to leave by 4:30 every day. It's creating those boundaries for yourself, for what you expect. Because unless you identify it and then start communicating and then advocate for yourself and those boundaries, they're not going to happen. They're not going to happen because nobody else is going to step in and start taking care of you and saying, I see you skipping lunch every single day, and I'm concerned about you because it doesn't look like you've taken a walk in a month. Nobody's going to say that. Those are things you have to identify, communicate, and advocate for on your own behalf.
Yes, that's interesting. It's taking control of the expectations so you don't betray yourself, but being very clear about those. And I think you're right. And I like your comment a few minutes ago about who am I going to complain to? The universe, right?
Right.
I'm going to shake my fist at the universe, and I'm so overwhelmed I can't basically communicate or even understand this aggregate of missed expectations, basically,
Yes.
or unmet expectations, because I don't even know what they are, and I don't have a
Yep.
framework, and people can get onto all kinds of journeys that way, right? Of resentment,
Yes.
I think,
Yes.
ultimately, right?
Oh, yeah. And I mean, even thinking about some of the simple things, traffic in the morning, commuting is rough. Did I really expect to have no traffic on my commute? Wow, let's break that one down. Because if that's my expectation that I can make it to work in 25 minutes because that's what I should be able to do,
Yeah,
but if you look and it's traffic and at that time of day it's 45 minutes, why am I setting myself up for that kind of stress?
yeah, yeah. That's interesting. Okay, learn to laugh. We've laughed a bit on this interview, so that's good. Tell me about that.
It's according to the Mayo Clinic, it's actually the number one way to calm and re-regulate the nervous system. Why that matters is whenever the human body is stressed, it goes into fight, flight, or freeze. Fight, flight, or freeze is not because you're weak, because you're too sensitive. It is the human's body's survival mechanism. Going into fight, flight, or freeze means you move from the prefrontal cortex back to the survival portion of your brain, which is amazing if a saber-toothed tiger is truly chasing you and you're going to die. Because that part of your brain puts you into reaction mode and it's survival mode. You do not care about preserving relationships. You do not care about long-term consequences. You care about get me out of this now. So if you're trying to get along with colleagues, if you're trying to create better relationships with clients, family, friends, and you're constantly reacting instead of responding, you're not doing that from the thinking portion of your brain. You are not reaching your full potential. You are not doing as well as you could be doing. So that's why it matters, is because you're not in the thinking portion of your brain. But second of all, when the cortisol is pumping, your body doesn't feel good. You've got tension in your stomach. You've got elevated shoulders. You've got a headache. Guess what happens? Cortisol is pumping through your body. It's not healthy. Then for a lot of people, the desire to drink comes in because I've got to tone down this energy surge from all of this cortisol, from all of this adrenaline that's running through my body. And it creates a vicious cycle of not feeling good physically and not reacting well emotionally.
Very interesting. The final topic is unbroken promises. Tell
Yes.
me about that.
That is such the summary of everything that we've talked about today. How often do you keep the promises that you say you're going to keep to yourself? Not very often. I'm going to call so and so back. I'm going to eat a healthy dinner. I'm going to stop eating sugar. I'm going to start doing this. I'm going to stop doing that. If somebody else broke promises to you at the rate that you break promises to yourself, you would not trust them at all. You would not want to be in a relationship with them because you knew they were going to let you down. So, why does this matter in terms of burnout, in terms of reaching your career potential, in terms of satisfaction? I talked about that earlier. You are in charge of you. Yes, there's some responsibility from your employer too. Yes, culture matters. But if you're not communicating that, if you're not saying what you want, if you're not saying what you need, if you're not advocating on your own behalf, if you're not taking steps to take care of yourself, culture's not going to change. Those around you aren't going to change. And you will continue to compress and to compress and to compress. And pretty soon you will be bitter, you'll be resentful, you'll be exhausted, you'll be angry. And truly, the only one we have to blame is ourselves for not standing up for who we are, for what we value, for what we believe.
That's a great outline of your, key tenets here,
Yes.
that are in your book. And also, I think it's interesting to, this work you've done, this journey you've been on tells me a lot. And this discussion as someone who's found their purpose. And
Yes.
I would imagine all that sort of betrayal and burnout feeling, it seems to me, has completely changed in yourself. You don't feel like that anymore. Is that correct?
So correct. And when I have moments, sure, I'll go into victim mode for a little bit. I'll throw a pity party for a little bit. And then I'm really reminded it's up to me to change this. It's up to me to change this. And I will communicate and I know how to advocate. I set clear boundaries. I use I statements. And if things don't shift, then it's up to me. Do I stay in this relationship? Do I stay in this situation or not? What can I do to shift it? And here's the fabulous and fascinating thing about this. So much of what we've talked about is aspirational. But when you put your aspirations out there and then support it, it just becomes a way of life and
Mhm.
it elevates those around you as well.
And how do you remind yourself of these aspirations? Again, like a quick tool,
Fuel
asking
up.
for a friend.
Yeah, exactly. No, I would just remind myself, is this fueling me up or is this draining me?
Yeah.
Because that's a common thing, especially among lawyers. We are high achievers. We think we can add in more. I'll just add in 10 minutes of meditation. I'll just add in another workout. I'll just add in a program. I'll just add in. The more you add in, the more opportunities for burnout, the more opportunities for broken expectations. So often it's about doing less, getting clear on what it is you're doing, putting those protections in place and fueling up. So I ask myself, are you fueling up? Is this fueling you up? And if the answer is no, I need to reevaluate.
In your practical work now, you write books, you speak at TEDx talks, you
Yes.
present. How does that work in practical terms? Like what do you do? Do you work with companies? Do you work with individuals? Explain a little bit more.
Yes, absolutely both. I go in, I do my It's Not Burnout, It's Betrayal presentation for continuing ed credits in law firms, in law departments, in companies. I keynote speak. I've spoken at several different legal conferences, legal events, offsites, like if there's a corporate offsite, whether it's legal or not, I speak there. And then sometimes individuals will want to hire me as well as a sounding board, as a place to vent. Let's talk once a week. Let's talk once a month. Let's figure out what's going on. It's the accountability piece. It's processing with somebody who can ground you and bring you back down. Because here's another shocker. Did you know lawyers really complicate things?
Yeah, but I can't because
Yeah, yeah. So in so much of my one-on-one coaching with people, it's just uncomplicating things and grounding you back down into the 3 to 5 things that really matter in this moment and that you do have control over. Because another shocker, we don't have control over everything. We don't have control over, especially all that we think we have control over.
yeah, the universe, as it
Yeah.
were. Final question. There's a generational shift underway in the profession. Do you
Yes.
notice in your work, because I think you do get to take the temperature of across the profession in a pretty authentic and unique way.
Yes.
And it must be fascinating as a study too, right? You get to see all kinds of firm cultures, corporate cultures, uh, people's own personal journeys. Do you notice a generational shift going on in terms of awareness of these types of things and prioritization of these types of things? Because something we see again in broad terms, at least in the headlines, is younger generations, Generation Z, have a different approach to work.
Yes.
And for different motivations, different reasons, perhaps disenchanted, or just realize this just doesn't seem to be working for the people who are older than me. Why would I go down that path? Tell me more on that.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up because absolutely. And I think it's a misnomer that these younger generations don't want to work. They want to work. They want to work hard. They have aspirations. They have all of the same things that we all have had, but they're not willing to let themselves burn out to the point that we have let ourselves burn out. And to me, that goes around that whole self-betrayal piece. So many of us, I'm like on the cusp of baby boomer here. So I think from baby boomer, this, 40s, 50s, whatever, we will self-betray a lot. We will still lean in and do more than we're capable of doing because we don't ever want to say no, or I just need to step back, get a glass of water, and take a break. We are still into that frame of mind that it's how much that we can do and that we can say yes no matter what.
Hmm.
So I think it's fabulous in the workplace right now because we can kind of see each other and we can mirror. I know a lot of the younger generation, they're really big on one of their phrases is, I can't grind that. I can't grind that long. And at first I was like, wait, what do you mean? And then I started thinking about it. When you really do have a machine grinding without water, without rest, it breaks down.
Mhm.
And we have broken down our minds, our bodies, our spirits. And I think we can learn so much from the younger generation. And I also think the younger generation can learn so much from us. And recently, I have seen more of a coming together than I have in the past and a willingness to kind of bridge that gap. And for the older generations to be like, yeah, I'm going to try taking a break. I'm going to try drinking a glass of water because water is actually necessary for the electricity in the brain. I'm willing to do those things. And I'm also seeing the younger generation being a little bit more willing to step up because they're being seen and because they're being heard and because they're not being told you can never have a break, you just have to lean in 100%. So I think we're bridging the gap, and I do think ultimately we're creating a workplace where people are a little bit less likely to self-betray and are a little bit more likely to speak up, to say what they want, to say what they need, and to advocate on behalf of themselves or on behalf of others.
Fascinating. Yeah, it's a fascinating time in the workplace, isn't it? So many
It is.
reasons, multiple generations under one roof.
Yeah.
Again, as I noted at the beginning of our conversation, out of the pandemic, this concept of hybrid work, and there's all sorts of things going on, and this fits in perfectly to that overall set of themes that are going on right now, both in the legal profession and in work writ large. So, Lora, I recommend everyone to read the book, It's not burnout, it's betrayal. 5 tools to fuel up and thrive. I look forward to seeing more of your work over time. And I appreciate you taking time today to teach us.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the thoughtful questions. It was a really enjoyable interview for me.
Likewise. Thanks, Lora.
Thank you for tuning in to the Legal Innovation Forum podcast. Stay tuned on our website for the next edition. You can listen to us on all your favorite podcast platforms. Tune in on liforum.co/podcasts.